Boom.
Hello.
Hello.
You would.
Hmm. Oh, I'm so tired.
Coffee, mate.
Yeah, that's what I'm drinking. I need to one up it with some of that glorious Red Bull.
Mm.
TM.
So
Oh no.
refreshing.
Why is our cam not working?
Well, you should be. I almost won the Red Bull now. You're
Cam.
doing a good job.
Why are our cams not working? What the hell?
Oh well.
What the? We're broken.
Be broke.
What the? It was literally just working. Hmm. Okay, well, we can start while I fix this cam situation.
Oh dear. Yeah, take a minute to fix it. Hey, and
Wait, we
half better.
fixed? Wait, where's Prox at?
You
What the
freaking
heck?
bush.
Prox, where'd you go?
What's going on?
Whoop. All right, well, I don't know where
Everyone's
Prox at.
always like, "Oh, you're
Oh,
so
there you are. You're
harsh on
beautiful.
Moofz."
All right. All right. We're good. We're good to go. Everyone's alive. All right. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We had to adjust something since Dilly's not here today. We had to make it a three-person podcast, so I had to adjust the UI a little bit. Little
Many
difficulties.
podcasts are just three people by default.
Oh, I know. Yeah. But yeah, we had to get a little survival in, little PvP in there.
True.
Keep our autistic pet around.
Yeah, we finally decided to kick him out. So yeah, Azor does not have a camera today because Azor, you want to tell everyone why?
Oh well.
His mum
My
became
mom
a
had to
cam
use it.
girl.
Well, my mom had to use it for conference call, so I kind of gave it to her.
Good guy Azor.
I'm a good boy.
What's her my free games account? Like just for a friend, asking for a friend.
Anyways, welcome to episode number 5 of the True Shot Lodge podcast. So I'm Moofz, and obviously we have Prox and Azor here. Dilly is not here. He is going to be very sporadic for this next couple months. He has a class that ends right when our podcast start, and so we tried it last week with him in the car, and that was very scuffed. So he will be hit or miss for the next couple months. But quick intro slash recap. Um, Last week we had a really good classic talk with Koth and Luck, and if you watched any of the race, that was really exciting. Got to see MC go down in 3 days, 4 days, right? Something like that. Uh, um, so
You were casting.
everyone's, yeah, I was casting it. It was very boring.
Oh, did you use any more cringy me's to describe it like you're part of method when you're not?
What do you mean? No, no, it was actually very
God,
like
this guy has no filter.
I don't know. Like I don't have as much of an attachment to classic, I guess. Honestly, I'm getting a little bored of it. I'm like level 32 or 33, and I don't know. I was going hard like the first week I got back, and then I've just sort of like it's getting so boring to level.
Yeah,
Like I
those
can't.
those
I just
those rose goggles start to slip real quick, and you're like,
yeah.
"Ooh, game's come a long way in 15 years. I really appreciate all the work and development that's gone in."
Yeah, I mean, there's like pluses and minuses, right? Because in classic, like you have an end goal, like you know what your best is, and you know, like there's no like farming for endless hours of AP and stuff like that. But
Yeah, and like definitely for anyone who hasn't actually like played and experienced all of that stuff before, it's worth it just to kind of gain that appreciation of where it has come from and how far it has come along.
yeah, I mean,
But
it's basically an
but
entirely different game. Like it doesn't
yeah,
feel like
you're s- you're starting to get a lot of the oh my god, so much better, like
yeah.
that's starting to wear off, and people are like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hype. I mean, honestly, the hype was or the what came of the launch and stuff was actually a lot more than what I expected it to be.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
I think the hype will definitely die down, and basically once everyone starts killing Raghan and Nixia and gets to that bis, it's like, all right, well now what do you do, right? And sort of hits a
Yeah, well,
lull.
I think the thing that's going to hurt it is the next release, whatever they're fucking calling it. Still, there's no battlegrounds. Like, hey, we put in the honor
Yeah,
system. There's nothing other than fucking zerging up and down Tara Mill, which, to be fair, is a good way to represent how it actually went down 15 years
right.
ago. But that will be so fucking dull. Like everyone in my guild, like when we've been like, battlegrounds aren't coming out in that one. They're coming out to the next one. They're like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm just gonna log off right now and not really give a shit then. But
yeah. I mean, what's coming next in phase two? It's the honor system and BWL. Is that right? I think it's BWL, which again is, might be good for like a week, and then people are gonna get bored of it again.
Is it really that easy?
yeah, so that will be done within probably the first 2 hours of the
I
server
mean, did
opening,
you
I would
did you see
imagine.
the first MC Azor? They literally hit
Uh,
60, like got the attunement, and went in with like full greens and one shot everything.
Half the group was in 60 as well, right?
Yeah,
Half the
half the
group was
group was like
still.
55, 56, stuff like that. So
yikes.
like, yeah, I mean
But that was always going to be the case. I said that
right.
from the beginning. It was like, oh no, it's going to be so. It's like, no, you need to appreciate how much Raiders' brains have fucking developed in that
Well,
time.
not
People
only
are a lot
that,
smarter.
not
Like,
No
only
one had
that,
frontal lobes
literally.
back then.
Well, I mean,
yeah,
literally the hardest part back then was just getting 40 people to stay online and not DC. And like, I mean, half the people didn't even know RAG existed or MC even existed until like, months into the expansion.
yeah. Um, I mean, you look at the shit that we come down on people like a ton of bricks for now, like the mistakes, and it's like, dude, that would be a fucking big brain MLG play in Classic. Like,
Yeah,
you're fine. This is now we ask for so much fucking perfection.
yeah. One thing I do appreciate about now, like this hunter compared to classic hunter, is the auto shots. Oh my god, having to actually track your auto shot and not interrupt it and stuff like that is so aids.
Yeah, you kind of experience the real original purpose for why swing timers and stuff are in place.
Yeah,
Like, ooh.
yeah, that and then like the mana and the pet happiness and all that crap, so annoying.
I
Having to
mean,
keep,
one thing I definitely think you all should do is get the fucking leaf from what you call it, Molten Core, and go do the Demon Quest for your Octolar. Like that is still
yeah,
actually a really cool, really enjoyable thing, and it's like um, a real huge, a real important piece of like the history of the hunter class. So
yeah,
I think everyone should experience that for sure.
yeah. I think I'm gonna like level to 60 and maybe like do an MC, but I'm definitely not gonna be one of those guys that does MC every week and, like I already raid on
Yeah,
live. I don't have enough time to raid in both
yeah,
games and stuff.
I need things to develop a bit further because I like, I get home from work, I launch Classic, and it's like queue of 3,000, and I
Yeah,
just
that
go,
too.
nope, and I instantly alt F4, log into live, do my like AP chores and shit, and it's like, yeah, by the time I'm through that queue, my while playing window for the day until the weekend is
Yeah.
over. I'm not gonna
Dude,
fucking sit there and do nothing.
I had never felt the need to like multi-box until last week when I was at the event and the queues were like 10,000, 13,000. I was like, man, I could be doing world quests or something on live. I could be doing, dungeon sales or something. And I finally transferred my Demon Hunter to my other account so I could do stuff while I was in queue. It was so bad.
Yeah, yeah, not fun, but such is life.
Yeah. Well, so talked a little about classic. Now back to retail, the good old retail.
Hey, my
Eternal
man.
Palace is done. Now what? What is there
For
to
most
do
of us.
now?
How you going, Azor?
Yeah.
God, I wish I had a camera right now. I imagine your face looks like a dropped fucking pie with that. But you came close, right? Like I didn't actually check your
I
attempts.
mean, it's. I mean, we had a last week. We had a 7% pull. Like last week, as in, I guess that would have to be Monday, right? And we show up and we failed to get Hall of Fame, but you know we got really close, so it should just fall over on Thursday yesterday, and we got a 5%, 5%, 3% wipe, and then we just never reach before again, basically.
Yeah, it can be quite tilting that way, where you just like start having dumb fucking attempts. Like I tilted so hard and I wound up wiping us like I think 2 or 3 times almost back to back of just fucking chucking a spear out into Africa. Like it was so fucking, I was so angry. And then because you get so angry at yourself, you make the mistake again. It was like, fuck. And like, but really quickly, because there can be a deep attempt and you're like, well, fucking, that might have been 3 pretty small mistakes, but that's half an hour from everyone's schedule gone.
Yeah. Yeah, the
I mean,
fight's
I'm
so
not
long
unhappy.
too.
Yeah, I'm not unhappy with my own performance. Really, I mean, I think like I'm playing okay, but
I was gonna say you sound like you're on the fucking ledge, and you're like, I'm not unhappy, but I have been researching painless ways to kill oneself.
Just would have been nice to get a Hall of Fame. But now, like based on yesterday's rate, it's like, oh, we never deserved that in the first place. If we'd gone in and just like two shot, it's like, oh man, we could have done it. You know, it would have been ours. But now I'm just like, oh, maybe it was just a fluke, that good attempt on Monday.
When are we doing away with Alliance Hall of Fame?
Yeah, that should be. It should just
Prox
be
is
like
1 out of 20 that Alliance Guilds has killed it, right? Something like
Actually,
that.
you know what they need to do is they need to make it proportionally the top 100 based on how many guilds there were when this expansion started. So now it's down to like Hall of Fame is like the top 8 guilds or something because 92% of the fucking guilds have
so
died.
many guilds, like Scrubbusters died this week.
I know.
Yeah,
so fucking
that was
sad.
actually kind of that was.
Yeah, I was like, that's been a guild since forever.
Yeah, I legit was quite sad for that, to be honest.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, guilds are just dying left and right. We were memeing in our Discord. We're like one of the top, we've always been like top 20 US or something like that, and we're like one of the only guilds now, so we just get all the good players. But yeah, I mean, very very sad. Okay, so what else to do? And now that EP is done for most of us, or almost done, you're on a jar, right? Aside from farming, yeah, I still need the crossbow. I still don't have a freaking crossbow.
Dude, I had the week from fucking like I finally had my procs week. I was feeling a bit lost. I hadn't had it, and last week I literally got everything you can imagine, everything you can want. I got it all in a single run. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty fit and heavy on the gear thing. Like,
I literally, I mean, I've also been gone like doing the casting stuff for like 3 weeks, right? So like I haven't been there every week, but I literally have had the worst luck. Like I don't have a crossbow, I don't have the Orgoza chest, I don't have for like Mythic Plus, I don't have the Ashvane shoulders or the Quinn's Court head. Is that right? I think that's right. I just don't have so much gear. Very sad.
yeah, no, I got a lot. Like I think when I get my next level, I hit 57k for my sim. So it's still like, I mean, that's memeing with Will Veins, but yeah, cheeky. Feels good to like be at that point where you're like, yep, I now want for nothing. I'm ready for next year. Let's go.
Yeah. So what else? Saving AP, right? Because I mean, you really don't like unless you don't. I mean, unless you want to or care about best in slot gear for parses and stuff. I mean, you should probably save AP.
Everyone.
Yeah. I mean, you should probably start saving AP if you're like min maxing for next tier.
What do you mean saving AP?
I mean, not AP. Titan Residuum.
Yeah. People will be saving that,
right? AP. Also, I didn't even realize when you hit 70, your reward for the quest is more AP. When you hit 70 neck. Did you know that?
Oh, nah, that's awesome.
What neck are you, Prox?
Sitting there undone. I'm at 69, and
you're about to get some more AP.
Yeah. So I'm probably about 4 days away from being done. Maybe 5. I might take it easy.
Um, so I mean, what else to do? I mean, you can work on alts, which is rough because like benthic and like essences and everything. And
Have fun.
yeah,
Pots just aren't fun.
I strategically picked my alt so that I would not be like I wouldn't have to farm the 50 honor for Blood of the Enemy. Because I feel like most of the others aren't that bad to get. Like it's, rep or like do 15 dungeons or do, whatever.
Yeah, that one's particularly bad. Conflict and Strife is also pretty
Yeah,
fucking dire.
yeah. But I
It's
Well,
not
you
think
can
bad
just
if
buy it
you're
on Gallywix, of course.
TM,
a self-promotion.
as all
We
the
also
new
sell Blood
techniques.
of the Enemy, I think.
yeah, that's how do you even sell that? Like you just go into battlegrounds and like get carried through
I
battlegrounds?
believe it's still a trade secret,
Oh, you're not allowed to.
but
All
we
right,
do it.
all right. Um,
Yeah, no, I'm like my ult's a fucking elemental shaman, and I fucking hate it. I do
don't
not
you need
enjoy.
Blood of the Enemy for that?
Who fucking cares? Ugh, fucking ults. I need to
Yeah,
play an alt that's not in the same armor class anyway, given it's just for splits.
yeah,
So we kind of have people play alts for two different reasons in our guild. Like one is to diversify in case one's bad. You're like, hey, I've got this one that's really good, and play that. I'm never going to do that. I'm always just going to play Hunter, and if Hunter is bad, I'll just be like, yeah, see you in a month. Bye, guys.
bench boy.
Yeah, because I care about Hunter too much that I'm not invested in the others. So I'll never play another class to
Yeah,
the same level I play Hunter. And that's the only level that's good enough at the level I'm playing it. So I'd rather do that or come up with a niche job to shoehorn a Hunter in rather than play an alt that I'm not having fun with and just be like,
yeah,
right, time to go fashion a noose out of a fucking belt.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have a rogue and a demon hunter, and honestly, I've given up on the rogue because it needs blood in the enemy and stuff for like Mythic Plus and raid, and I was like, yeah, screw that. But I play
Demon
my
Hunter's actually fun. Yeah.
yeah demon hunter because you don't need blood of the enemy really because for I beam you get the I beam always crits, and so blood of the enemy doesn't really do much for demon hunter.
Yeah, that runs its
Uh,
value. That makes sense.
yeah, but yeah, so I've been playing my demon hunter, and then obviously you can tank and DPS, so it's good for like sales and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't think like it's so hard to like be serious about an alt with essences and benthic and
Yeah, it's the hard. I can't remember a time where that's ever been as alt unfriendly as right now. But that's okay because there's so much to do on your main.
yeah.
You could do world quests or more world quests or
Yay.
daily quests, which are different to world quests, but will give you some
Uh,
sweet pearls.
or
Oh,
play WoW
pearls.
Classic. Haha.
Oh, those sweet pearls.
uh,
Oh.
someone say something about Wildfire Bomb. Wildfire Bomb. There you go.
It really pumps in PvP. Good ability. I like it a lot.
Yeah. All right.
Actually, like genuinely, the animation of Wildfire Bomb in general, but especially in PvP because you're hitting small targets, it's really sick.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
All right. Too much survival discussion. All right. Back to real
Oh,
Yeah,
classes.
tone
that
it
was the
down.
quota reached. All right, moving on.
um, all right. So the real topic of this podcast, we're gonna start talking about simulation craft. So a warning for everyone who's just listening on like obviously this is live, but who's listening to like iTunes and Spotify. We're gonna be doing a lot of visuals and like showing you sims and raid boss and stuff like that. So highly suggest you check out the YouTube video or the Twitch video from here on out. All right, so switching over, we've got our handy dandy little raid bots. So just a quick recap. If you have no idea what SimC is, what raidbots is, Azor, you just want to touch on, what is it, I guess?
Well, if you've been playing a while, you'll be familiar with simulation craft, which is what everyone used basically to sim their character and figure out upgrades and stuff. Raidbots basically just takes all of that and puts it into a web-based UI, and it makes a lot of the things that were difficult to do in the original simulation craft very, very easy, so that anyone can do it. And on top of that, he's extended it with a lot of the guy who makes it is named Cielos,
Yeah.
and he's extended it with a lot of features about things that I mean, you would need insane amounts of time, and yeah, basically, for example, a Top Gear thing, you couldn't really do that even manually with Simulation Craft before. And basically, it's just a way, it's like the mandatory way to improve your character in the game.
Yeah, so like a lot of this stuff, I mean, Raidbots is just a easy UI for everyone to use, right? Like it basically is SimC, and a lot of this stuff, like the talent compare, the gear compare, the stat weights, all that stuff you can do in manual, like the old-fashioned SimC. It's just you have to have like all these commands and like Azor said, like it takes a lot more effort to do it, and this is just a lot easier to do to use. But if you don't know how to use this, so first start out by going to getting this add-on, the Simulation Craft add-on, which you can go in game. So once it's installed, you can go in game and just type /simc, and then it gives you a window with a bunch of stuff. All you have to do is Control C, so just copy that. Then you go back to Raidbots, and then you can click any of these. So you can go to Top Gear, whatever. Okay, this is my crappy Demon Hunter. So you just paste it in this box, and then it brings up your gear right here. It brings up your talents, and it brings up your essences. And then it brings up all your gear that you have in your bag. So this does not include gear in your bank. So if you want to sim something, you have to make sure it's in your bags or on your person. But it gives you all these options, right? So for gear, so if you want to sim, different pieces, whatever, you can click it. You can click the different Azurite, etc., blah 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 blah. Now you do have, if you look down here, you do have iterations, which the number of iterations here depends on the level of your account. So if the free account, do y'all know how many iterations you get for the free account?
I want to say 800,000, but that might be completely wrong.
Okay.
I think it's really low.
I'll
It's
find
Yeah.
out.
like it's like
I'm gonna
20.
find out while
Oh
we
yeah,
Yeah.
just go
keep
into like
talking.
in private tab or something.
Yeah. So
300,000.
300,000. So
Dang.
Harley needs some look, obviously I highly suggest, like I usually don't like tell people to go buy stuff, but I highly suggest you get a good account here if you're serious about simming yourself. I have the top account, and so this is, you get what, 11 million combinations, which is like I can do like so many different.
I
Why
feel
do I
like the
get
11
more
mil
than
might
you?
be
Yeah, I get
do you
more
get
than
more
you.
procs?
Yeah.
What
To
do you get?
You get more than me? What the heck?
yeah, I think they're limiting. I think they've put you on a diet, which I mean,
What the heck? I have the
Dude, how much do you have procs? I need to know this before we
Wait,
proceed.
I have the developer account. What the hell? I
Yeah, I
need
have that as well.
I need to talk to him about
I
this
also have 11 million. Like, what?
then. Wait, do you actually have more procs? What the?
hang on.
He's trolling.
You're trolling. This is supposed
Trolling.
to be the top tier because we can see like the beta
I have 12
versions.
million. I have 12 million,
What
legit.
the heck? Okay, we need to send him a message
Hang on. All right.
Every
I
Everyone, please
promise I'm not
brigade the
trolling.
Raidbots Discord.
then. uh, anyways, yeah, so you
Yeah,
can
look at that.
click, all the stuff that you want to sim. Then
11
obviously
million peons.
you're limited by the iterations, and you can lock certain things because like one of the things it does for like rings, it'll sim like ring 1 and ring 2, ring 1 and ring 3, ring 2 and ring 3. Like it just keeps going through all the rings, and so if you know this is a 455 socket and it's without it at my best, you can lock it and it drops the iterations, right? So then it'll only do like 1 and 2, 1 and 3 instead of doing all the different combinations. So like trinkets and rings can up the iterations or consume the iterations very fast. So if you have one that's good,
Yeah,
just do that.
the locking is a really good way of reducing those iterations, either to get your sim done faster or to be able to check way more
Yeah,
combinations of other things. Like
yeah,
you wouldn't think it's as big as it is. It makes a huge difference,
yeah,
especially if you're like trying to check an off trinket. and there's a lot of other ones you're looking through, but you have a lot of other stuff you're trying to check as well. Like just the multiplicative impact of that is so fucking big.
Yeah. So then moving on, we have enhancements, which are basically just enchants and gems. So you can sim, ideally you do like your gear sim. When you start adding a bunch of different, these, you're going to start, this is the same iteration, right? So ideally do your gear sim, come back, do your enchant sim. If for BM, like it's pretty much always crit, right? And so you go crit everything, etc. And then you can sim a couple of the different weapons and stuff like that if you want, but you can sim, replace all of them. You can say always use the agility one or not. So mess with that. And then we have the essences, the same thing. So you have your one major, and then I only have one minor unlocked in my Demon Hunter because I'm a Pepega and it's my alt. But as soon as you hit 65, you can get multiple minors, and so it'll allow you to select. It'll pick the two best out of the however many you select. And then you can come down to talents, sim all your different talents, etc. Then you come all the way down here, and then we get to so iterations. Generally, just keep it on smart sim. You can sim more iterations, and the more
Yeah, there's
iterations,
no need for you to fuck with that
yeah,
ever. Like for anything you guys will be doing, just leave it.
yeah. Patchwork. So we'll talk about this stuff here in a second. These are all the different styles of sims that you can do, and so we'll sort of go over like what each of these actually are, when
Yeah,
you
there's
should use
one
them,
that's
etc.
relevant and a bunch that
Yeah.
idiots have fooled themselves thinking are relevant and then just fucking waste everyone's time.
Yeah. So number of bosses, fight length. Always do the nightly version. The weekly is just they release a weekly version every week, obviously, and then the nightly version is usually the most up to date. So like if there was a change yesterday, it would be in the nightly version, but it would not be in the weekly version until the following week, if that makes sense. So just typically always do the nightly. And then there's all these different. So Battle for Azeroth. This stuff typically changes from expansion to expansion. Like obviously he added the undulating tides, loyal to the end, world ban, all that stuff. And so you can sort of mess with this. You have all your different potions, food, flasks, and stuff like that. Back here in BOD we had the Treacherous Covenant. He added that and stuff like that. So all these different options you can mess with. Um, this is the basic setup though. The patchwork, one boss, 5 minutes. This is what most people like when they're linking sims. This is the setup they use, which you should almost always use. I think sometimes you can change the time for like, Azara is like a 10-minute fight, right? So you can change it to 10 minutes or something like that. And certain abilities or certain, essences might be better with different time lengths. But yeah, so that's basic Top Gear. Super good. So moving on to Droptimizer. Droptimizer is basically wait, I need to find
It's a good way of checking what upgrades are left for you
Azortharion.
in various things of content. It's
Yeah,
you
so
sometimes have to apply a little bit of brain power to it.
so here we have, the world bosses, Operation Mechagon. So you can pick which zone you want. So EP, Mythic, 445, right? So you can see he has all of the hunter gear, right, for the first boss, second boss, etc. And if it's crossed out, that means you're wearing this or you have a better version already. Or I think it just means you're wearing it, right? If it's crossed out. Is that the
If
stuff
it
you're
crossed
wearing?
out, it means you have the same item as equal or high item level than
Right.
that. But if you then go up and increase like the Warforged or Titanforged level, then it will be. But that obviously doesn't apply to Ace, right? But
Right.
everything else.
Yeah, and so you can do the sim, so I'll just do a quick sim for Azor here.
Thank you.
Let me show you what you need, Azor.
Uh,
So typically if you don't have the accounts, so if you're just doing a free account or whatever, you have to wait very long time. So another reason for getting an account is you don't have to wait. You just go immediately into the sim, which saves you a bajillion minutes if you're running a bunch of sims. Doo-doo-doo. All right, so looking at Droptimizer, so Azor needs Jara's font
Yeah, I do.
and Razor. So he just needs the trinkets, right? So if
Yeah,
you're
I do.
Have you not got the font from all your Ashara kills so far? Like, is it not?
I can't even get a freaking coral, man. And okay, just very small rant. Ghost, he has 440 socket coral from Heroic Week, and then last raid he gets fucking 450 coral, and he can't trade it, and I'm still stuck with a 435 baseline coral. So screw personal loot.
Yeah. But I mean, you can see it tells you your upgrades and stuff like that. So your expected value and your best drop. Expected value means this is basically where you should use your coins, right? And this as is probably a bad example because he doesn't really need that much. But if you have a person in heroic gear, it'll show you, multiple pieces are available. If you roll and get a piece, you're going to get this much of an upgrade. Your best drop is this much of an upgrade, and then it gives you your priority based on boss, like who you should be rolling on, stuff like that. So very useful in terms of
That the only thing you really need to know is that the difference between like your best drop or expected value, like all that's doing is it's saying like, hey, this one boss has this really fucking good item for you, but this other boss has 4 okay items for you that are all an upgrade. Well, if you bonus roll a piece of loot, it kind of doesn't matter what it is from that one. You're going to get something. This one, if it's the right piece, it's a big payoff, but it could be nothing.
yeah.
So you just kind of have to prioritize. Are you going for much little upgrades? You want the really big one, and decide for yourself what your approach, your strategy is, and then click the button and get the loot. Like that's the bit that I find works really well. If you just want it and then you click on the boss, the item you want is there, so it works out.
Yeah, so a bunch of different things. You can do this with Raid, obviously. You can do it with Mythic Plus, like if you're trying to find out which piece you want to use your roll on, or your residuum on. You can do this with Mythic Plus pieces. You can say, hey, this is an upgrade, stuff like that. The only thing with, I know for BM hunters, I don't think it's true for the other two specs. But if you're doing that for the residuum pieces, the Mythic, the Azurite, and it wants you to replace your only PI piece, it'll be less like it'll tell you it's not of an upgrade because you're getting rid of that PI piece. So
Yeah, you need to use your brain when it comes to what you're looking for with the Residium vendor. Once it's not in Mythic Plus, like we've said, it's in the Azurite vendor or Residium vendor tab. They are just looking at, hey, if I replace that piece with this piece, or if I replace that piece with this piece, it's not looking at, hey, you have this way fucking better combo in your bag for when you finally get the Soul Scarred helm or for when you finally
Right.
get Cannonier's Shoulders. So you need to kind of think about that, and it won't always be as helpful as it could be in that respect unless you go out of your way to change some stuff. But still, definitely for a lot of these things, you still need to use your brain. It's not like, hey, here's this option. You don't have to think anymore. It's important to still go through that
Yeah.
process.
So looking at some of the other, so gear compare. Gear compare is Top Gear is always a better option than Gear compare. Gear compare is just sort of like a, hey,
Quick
you're
and
not
dirty
sure if,
for upgrades.
yeah, you're not sure if ring 1 or ring 2 is better. You can literally just come in, oh, ring, whatever. I don't know what a good ring is, but
Where gear can be is really good is if like something drops in raid. Hey, it's Warforged once and it's got a socket, and you want to be like, oh, that's a 600 DPS upgrade for me, and the other person that was maybe going to get it's like, oh, it's only a 200 for me. Okay, well now the raid knows we can go to there, or like that sort of shit is what it's really good for something that's not in your bag, something that whatever, and isn't just like a standard base drop that you've got and looked in advance. Being able to say, oh, this is how much of an increase that would be. Sometimes what you can also do, I'm probably jumping ahead, is you can take the details from that gear compare and chuck it as if it's in your bags and Top Gear, and then you're looking at,
yeah.
okay, it might not be a direct upgrade, but if I upgrade that and then swap this other thing, now it is. So you can
Yeah.
actually use it in conjunction with Top Gear quite nicely.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. That's sort of like more of the advanced stuff that we'll talk about here in a second. But yeah, that is something very useful you can do. So moving on, talent compare, and so this is in Top Gear as well. This is just sort of like, again, a quick like, hey, what talent should I be using with this gear set? You
You will
can
never
just
click on this button and you will never use it. It's a
basically,
waste of time
yeah,
and it's a worse UI than Top Gear. Just do it through Top Gear, forget that exists. And if you're BM, forget that other talents exist. You can
yeah.
fucking change them anyway.
This is pretty much irrelevant now that he incorporated it in Top Gear. Originally, this was a separate, like, he didn't have the talents in Top Gear, and so he had this talent compare. But yeah, pretty much never use this now that it's in Top Gear. So quick sim, this is basically just, hey, I want to know what my sim is. Boom, put something in there. I mean, not really. If you're going to do any fancy stuff, you go to advanced. If you want any comparisons, you're going to do gear compare or top gear. This is literally just, hey, I wonder what I sim with this gear set. Boom, control
What
copy paste.
QuickSim has done for a while now is really nice. Is when you do chuck it in, it gives you a nice little like damage breakdown in a better form. So you used to have to click into the
Oh yeah, it does.
report itself and pull that up in a not very nice to look at format. I don't know if you just want to chuck that in, hit some so you can show what I'm talking about. But yeah, you get a
Yeah.
nice little graph with your damage breakdown. It's good to see. It's also quite nice to be like, my trinket should be doing 4%. That boss kill I just got, it did 8%. I think I had some good RNG.
Yeah. So the damage breakdown he's talking about is this. And so this is, so you can see, you can break down of, claws, melee, stomp, kill command, etc. So you can see how much he should be doing more or less with his, venomous bolt, his azurite beam, murder crows, etc. You can see like all the different buffs he had, the approximate, conflict and strife, 97% uptime, dance of death, he has 65% uptime, etc. So it's very good as like a quick, you know,
Yeah, so all of
breakdown.
that information was always there, but you had to click into the full HTML report and it was not in a very nice to look at UI.
Yeah.
So it's not information you didn't already have, it's just in a much easier to consume format.
Yeah. So moving on to stat weights. Stat weights super easy. The thing with stat weights is you probably don't use it that much. I mean, you do and you don't, right? Because you're not going to ever use your stat weights and be like, okay, I need, crit and mastery, and then I'm gonna roll pieces based on crit mastery, right? You're gonna do top gear, drop optimizer, stuff like that for your gear selections, but you can use it to say, okay, I need to, I need to lean towards crit when I'm rolling, or stuff like that. It's just a very generalized.
Realistically, stat weights is a holdover from when people used to use pawn for upgrades. With how accessible Raybos has made simming, these days, if you're still using pawn for upgrades, you're like actually just inting and you should drink bleach. Like legit, just uninstall that fucking add-on. It's not helpful. The most you're really going to get out of stat weights now, every now and then you can jump in and check and be like, oh yeah, verse is creeping back up for me. And it doesn't mean anything. You won't make any decisions based off it because you have much better information to make more informed decisions from. So you will very rarely use it, but every now and then it's nice to check in and be like, oh yeah, just having a look at how it's all balancing out at the moment.
Yeah, so you can see, so Azor, obviously he has, weapon DPS is the highest, then he has crit, haste, verse, and stuff, and so on. And so you can sort of use this as a general idea, but you're never going to use this as, hey,
Yeah.
this is an
This is
upgrade for
simming
me.
my a shower setup
Oh, it is, yeah, it has
because
your focus
iris.
iris. Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
you shouldn't make any decisions based off this information.
Yeah. Um,
Many people still do, and those people are bad.
yeah. All right, so getting into this, this is most people, 95% of people will never need this tab. Most of what RaidBots does now basically incorporates all the stuff you really need. The advanced tab is basically, I mean, it's advanced, right? Like all the super technical, like if there's a hot fix that came out and you're so impatient that you have to sim at that instant, you can come in here, do some do some coding, sim your hotfix, and see what the buff or nerf is. If you want to sim all the different races because you want to get a race change, you can do that in here. If you want to make raid events and get super fancy, and if you can do a super specific dungeon, you can do super specific boss fights. If there's like an intermission, you can stop the intermission and do a fancy sim like that. Like this is like where it starts to get like super advanced. But like I said, all of the raid bot stuff basically can do most of this stuff in here, and this is just the super like niche things that you might want to do.
Hey, you're banned from saying the word super anymore. One thing is like generally as each tier starts, for those options that are specific to the tier, like undulating tides, like aberrations, all of that sort of thing, quite often it will be through here that you'll have to come and, there'll be people talking in the Discord, there'll be pins, whatever, around, hey, for this particular thing, you need to do an advanced sim and check this thing in. That's probably the time where you most frequently use this. And then eventually those things will get baked into Top Gear or wherever it's being looked at, and then you kind of dial back how much you use it. But it's important to know that's there. The other place where you can often do a lot of those, which again we'll talk about a little bit later, is the custom APL section. You can just dump some random shit in there.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, a lot of things like the benthic gear when it first came out, or even Azurite when it first came
World
out.
Vein Allies
World
was a big
Bin,
one.
yeah,
It's,
or enabling your pet or disabling it for marksman, or Shiver Venom, stuff like that. When it first released, when it doesn't have coding enabled in SimC, there's like workarounds and stuff that's introduced that we tell you, hey, come in here. And so you do need to know how to use this to an extent if you're planning on simming yourself. So get familiar with it. So some things you can do here. So with advanced, obviously you can copy and paste your slash simc here. If you have a new APL, so I know like Ghost does this a lot. He works on the APL, and before it's submitted, he gives people, the APL. You can copy and paste it here with the new APL, and you can see what changes he made and stuff like that. So just a quick breakdown of what this stuff is, or means rather. So this is the info of your tune, right? So when you do slash simc, or you sim yourself, this is, your name, level, race, etc., etc., etc. This is obviously specific for this expansion. This is an Azurite, so this has your essences, and if you have no idea what these mean, this is basically, what is this? This is your Azurite, and then do y'all remember what these are specifically? I think it's like major, minor, something like that.
So the first number is always the major, and then the ones following, of course, the first number is the ID of the essence, and the next one is the rank.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
rank 3, rank. Yeah, so these are all your available essences, right?
Yeah, and then up top it's just major, minor, minor.
Right, okay. So if you want to mess with that, you can mess with that. These are obviously your like what gear you're wearing. So you have head, neck, blah 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 blah. Your
Just sorry,
IDs.
just really quickly, that so those lines above, if you are like, hey, I wanted to see, I'm about to get conflict and strife rank 3, I want to do my sims based on if I had that and make decisions based on using that, that's where you can change that. You can change those 2s to a 3, and they will immediately change in your top gear, and any sims will now use it as if it was rank 3 that you had
Yeah.
available to you.
So
So
like
yeah.
so like for me, this 15-1, I'm pretty sure this is the what's that super shit Azurite that teleports you?
Rippling space.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Ripple in Space because I have never cared to get rank 2 of that. So this is Ripple in Space rank 1 is what this 15:1 is saying. And so obviously all of them have different IDs and stuff like that. So you can change that right there. So going back, you have the gear and stuff. And if you ever want to, if obviously you probably have no idea what the gear is and stuff like that, you can actually just go to Wowhead. And I'm not sure, do you know, does WoWDB have the line and stuff for some of those pieces? Do you know, Azar?
Which pieces?
Just like, does WowDB give you all this information, like the ID, bonus ID, all that stuff?
Yeah, you can just look at the URL. You can also use Wowhead.
Oh, okay.
The bonus ID, I'm not sure about WowDB, but if you're just making your own, you don't really need to enter the bonus ID. You can get away with just putting in comma to separate the elements of the line, and then just I level, like as in literally the letter I, and then level equals whatever you want to set it to.
Yeah.
And then if you want to add a socket, you'd write comma gems equals 60 crit or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. So if you don't want to remember all that, you can literally just come to Wowhead, go to links, and this simulation craft, it literally has a line for simulation craft. You just copy and paste this, and you just copy, whatever you want here. Or you can just do basic stuff like what they're saying, if you remember that. And then all this stuff, this is gear from bags, which gear from bags, which is all this stuff down here. If you're looking at, all right, so you can also go, so if you don't know what this is the actual Simulation Craft website. So you can, if you have no idea what the APL is, I guess we haven't even talked about what the APL is versus, like what goes on in the background. Um, so if you guys don't know what SimC is, right? So it's basically a community driven program that a bunch of people, so the difference between AMR or Noxic or all those like sims that you see out there is you have one or two people that do all 36 specs versus Simulation Craft has probably five-ish people per spec. Is that right? Something like that. Some of them have more.
There is, but I mean, essentially, it's trying to get into explaining open source software, which is fine. But the big thing, really, to understand what SimC is and isn't, because a lot of people get confused on this. It's not doing any like AI, big data. It's not doing any analytics to find the optimal thing you should be doing. It's following a very specific predefined set of instructions. So that's called the
Right.
APL, or the action priority list. It only follows those instructions. And then the reason we talk about all these iterations is to account for the RNG, because there's so much RNG in this game that you need to be like, hey, if you have really good luck, it will do this. If you have bad luck, it will do this. And we get enough that we get a good representation statistically for what you should be doing, and make decisions based off that. But it will only ever follow that specific set of instructions. And for some classes, there absolutely could be a more optimal way to play that particular thing, and SimC will never know it. It will never find that until those instructions have been altered to account for that. So that's a lot of the development that goes into it. Isn't from developers who are changing code. It's from people who are refining the APL, who are
Yeah.
working out, hey, based on these, and each tier throws a new set of challenges that we have to work that out for. Where we effectively have to account for not just what's optimum with this, but every possible iteration and combination of those. And hunters are very lucky in that there are a couple of people like JEZ,
Nuo.
NeuroHip, etc., who are very good at finding those and putting those in and interpreting in a way
Yeah.
that we get helpful information. Some classes really don't have anywhere near that, and it makes this entire tool much less valuable to them. But yeah, understanding that it's not going to go outside of those instructions, that's something, a mistake I see people make quite a
Yeah.
bit in understanding.
Another mistake, which what he was literally just saying. So these graphs are just a sim of, well, there's a lot of things wrong with these graphs, but the first one is that these graphs are only as good as the APLs that people have written, right? And so if say Feral Druid has a really shitty APL and it doesn't mimic how you actually play it, right? Well, then this is going to be totally inaccurate. And so when you're looking at a graph like this, half of these can be accurate and half of these can be very bad, right? And so it makes a graph like this very inaccurate. Not only that, there's a lot of things like a lot of people don't input proper gear and stuff like that, or and so it just graphs like this are just very inaccurate to begin with. Um,
And the elephant in the room is, of course, that those particular graphs that you're looking at right now, they're tier 23, and on the official website, it's not actually the tier 24 like Eternal Palace profiles. So right now, those sims right now are running like BUD gear, but with modern essences and stuff. So it's just completely like
Yeah.
brainless.
Yeah.
With that said, like if you go on, Blood Mallet, hero damage, I believe all those things, um, the sims there will be based on tier 24 profiles. You just can't see those profiles on the website.
Yeah. But again, things like Blood Mallet and all those things use the APLs that we give them, or that, the Hunter class, Nuo, JZ, Azor, Ghost, they all write the APLs and stuff like that. They use the APLs that we give them, and it's only as accurate as the APL is, as how, if we have improper gear, like say this is outdated gear sets that we give them, then the APL, then the result that they get is going to be inaccurate because it's not updated. So take all that stuff with a grain of salt. Definitely
Mm.
sim yourself always.
Yeah. And like one more thing, it's worth like making the distinction between strictly APL, which is the set of instructions telling the computer in this case how to play, and the whole profile, which includes the gear, like the gear in the profile, and the and the talents and all that stuff. That's not the APL. It's only strictly the APL is only the where you see the actions on your
Yeah,
screen
the
right now.
instruction
Yeah,
set.
So
yeah.
this is the APL, what I'm
So
highlighting right now.
the outcome of a sim, any given sim, be it on Blood Mallet or something you do yourself, is obviously a product of the gear, the essences, the talents, all that stuff, and the APL that's being used, the rotation basically.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go over the entire APL that we have. So just looking at the BM APL right now, you can see it literally says pre-combat, use your flask. Pre-combat, use your augment rune. Summon your pet. Snapshot stats, use your potion. And so the APL literally tells you everything that you do. So if you're thinking in your gameplay, right, you pre-pot, you cast Bestial Wrath, you do all this, you barb shot, you can literally go through the APL and look at all these commands. And a lot of this is probably foreign to a lot of you, but this is the code that tells you, hey, this is the step-by-step order that you use your abilities and stuff like that. And so when we make improvements to the APL, we're, writing different conditions, we're moving stuff around and switching it in different places and priorities and stuff like that. And so that's basically what the APL is. And so if you're super into it, you can learn how to do this, and you can come in and just mess with it yourself and say,
Yeah.
oh, maybe barb shot would be better if you put it up here, and you switch the line or something, and you can mess with it.
Yeah, there was a guy like a few weeks ago. He stepped into the VM channel and he had made this APL just around his own gear, which is really crit heavy and free DoD and everything. And it had just like taken all the complexity out of the barb shot line in the default APL that you see right now, and it was just purely basically just mashing barb shot whenever Dance of Death was not up, and you got like a small DPS increase out of that.
Huh. Um, yeah, I mean, there's always optimizations to do, and I mean, obviously, this is a human run program, so it's probably not always 100% accurate. But that being said, this is probably, I mean, this APL at this point, I mean, not much has changed for hunters in a while, right? So it's probably 99% accurate as far as we know.
Yeah, I
It's
think
pretty good. There are occasionally niche situations, but
yeah, I think there are like uncommitted changes that might amount to like a few tenths of a percent.
Yeah.
But it's
very
also,
often,
you make a change to the gear set, the default gear set in the tier 24 profile, or something for my gear, or Moofz gear, or Prox's gear, and then you apply it to another gear set of like one of you guys, and it's not an increase anymore. So you have to be
yeah, exactly.
conservative with how you apply those updates.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about this before we move on. So when you do an advanced, or actually we can just do the quick sim, right? So let's do, where's your quick sim at? So from the RaidBots UI, so what we are just looking at was this from the simulation website. You can see the profile and stuff. And so this is the HTML report that you get when you do a sim, right? So you typically don't see this unless you want to now. So if you want to see it, you can go click on the full HTML report, right? So this is the Raidbots UI, and then it brings you to the Simulation Craft UI. So this is literally what we were just looking at. You can see all the talents, Azorite. You can see some graphs, the DPS distribution, right? The mean, per execute, all this stuff. So you can
How you know it was put together by developers, because it's fucking ugly.
yeah. And so you can see the profile that you just simmed with, right? So if you're ever confused about, hey, this doesn't look right, you can look and see the gear that you use, like, oh, I messed up. This is supposed to be this enchant, or whatever. So you can see the APL that you just used, that you simmed with. The big thing that I want to show you that a lot of people don't know exists is you can literally go to a sample sequence and what it looks like. And so this literally tells you second by second what happens. And so you have all your pre-combat stuff. As soon as you pull, you get Bestial Wrath, Barb Shot, Aspect of the Wild, and Murder Crow, which is our opener, right? This is where we get.
Yeah, just quickly, the reason why it's called a sample sequence is taking one pull. Like, I might have done 10,000 iterations, there's 10,000 pulls. Sample sequence is taking one because it responds to procs and all of that sort of thing. So that's what you're seeing there. If you're like, oh, I tried to copy the sample sequence, but blah wasn't up at that time.
Sometimes you'll see it do like the sample sequence will do like 4 barb shots in a row, but that's because that iteration it's basing the sample off of just happened to get procs right there.
Yeah. So I just think it's important for people to realize
that. But this is you can go to like Warcraft logs and look up different, what people are doing, but this is also another very good way if you're not sure what the rotation is, or you're not sure, what would the sim do in this situation. You can see, hey, this is a good example of what it would do, right? And obviously there's some conditions you have to sort of use your brain a little, but you can sort of see, and it tells you, all the buffs that it has and stuff off to the right, and the time, and your focus levels and stuff like that. And so very, very good tool to utilize if you're ever looking at different rotations and stuff like that. For any class, not just hunters. You can go to rogues and look at rogues, or whatever. Okay, so moving on. If you do not know, so we talked about raid bots and all the capabilities and advanced and all that stuff. And Snap, if you want to do more advanced stuff, go to Google, type in Simulation Craft GitHub, where you can look at how to Simulation Craft. I don't know. Google will bring this up for you. This is basically a huge wiki page on Simulation Craft, and it tells you a lot of the basics that you can use in advanced. And so, like off to the right here, you have just like basic stuff. You can go to stat scaling. So you calculate scale factors. This is literally how you calculate your stat weights.
Which you can then not use because, as we discussed, they're kind of pointless.
Right.
One of the things that you will get from this list that you should be thinking about and being ready for are things like, hey, I really just want to know about the last 4 minutes of a shower, so I want to start the HP at 50%, or hey, I just specifically want to know this answer for when I'm in execute phase. So you can do things like fix boss healths, or those are the kind of things where when you're starting out, you're getting used to it. Some of these things you will need to come in and find that. There's not a lot of scenarios, but some of those stuff are like realistic applications where you will go and you'll use that and it will be useful.
Yeah. So if you ever want to, you don't know how to do X when you're trying to sim something in advance, take a look at this before you come ask all these questions. But this will probably answer the format and how you do stuff. Like this, for example, spell override. If there's a hotfix that goes out, say Bestial Wrath gets buffed by 5%, I don't know, whatever. You can come in and say spell override data. You put your spell, the effect, the power, what the new value is, and stuff like that, and then you can literally see what the hotfix is yourself, right? So the big thing I wanted to talk about here are the raid events. So this is all of the. So when you go to all right, so when you go to fight style, these are all of these. So patchwork, dungeon slice, target dummy, etc. These are all the different types of raid events, right? So first of all, I can tell you the useless ones, all of these lower ones below below hectic ad cleave are pretty useless. We can sort of go over what they are, but just basically don't use any of them ever. Like Beast Lord is literally mimicked off of Beast Lord Darmak, right?
Yeah.
Ultraxian, obviously, it's mimicked off of the Ultraxian fight. Helter Skelter is, I'm pretty sure it's like the most, like it's super random ad spawns and duration or something like that. Actually, it tells you in here. We'll set up a crazy fight, and it tells you what it's equivalent to over here. Um, so the big things, obviously, the patchwork is the default, which everyone uses. So it's literally a perfect standstill fight, single target fight, iconic of literally the patchwork and Naxxramas, right? For a lot of the reason this is basic, or this is what we use, is just because that's just, I don't know, the standard, I guess, right? Especially for BM, you're never going to use light movement or heavy movement, which is basically just patchwork, but it adds a little bit of player movement every now and then.
Yeah, so I mean, forgetting about that, realistically, fights are incredibly scripted in this game, and your movement can often be planned for. So having the sim randomly be like, "Hey, you have to move here," doesn't really apply. What's much better is to be able to say, "You still need to use your brain when it comes to sims. Here's how it would be idealistically if there was no movement. Plan your movement or whatever as much as possible, and factor these things in." It's the reason why it's the standard is because it's much better to account for all of those other fucking random things that can happen with the knowledge that you have, and to still engage your brain. Where I get incredibly triggered is when people start using fucking dungeon slice and hectic ad cleave and thinking that it is in any way fucking helpful or a fair
Yeah.
representation. Like, no, use the information you have around Patriot, play with target numbers, and then just engage your fucking brain, and you'll
Yeah,
get
and
a
so
better result every time.
that's I I think the majority of questions we have is in regard to Mythic Plus and how to sim. Like I think everyone sort of gets to use Patchwork for raid. Um, the other stuff doesn't really matter that much, but the I think the most questions is Mythic Plus and simming. And so we can just talk in depth about these two, like what first of all what they do, because a lot of people just have no idea and they just you know hey, sim hectic leave, okay, and they just do it, right? They have no idea what it is. Um, so we'll tell you just basically what it is, and then tell you why, how they're semi-correct and how they're really wrong, and you shouldn't use either of them really. But okay, so starting out with hectic ad cleave, um, basically hectic ad cleave, and you can literally see what it does here. It tells you the lines it adds to, but it's basically like the Horizon fight. And so you have one boss for a very long period of time, and then you have waves of six, I believe. It's five plus the one boss, right? So it's six. Every, what was it, 45 seconds? Oh, it's every. I think it's
You're
like every
looking at the
45 seconds.
cooldown.
Oh, 30. Yeah, yeah, okay. So the cooldown right there. Um, so it's like every 30 seconds ish, and it's just basically a lot of ads, right? And so one boss, a lot of ads, break, a lot of ads, break. And one thing that a lot of people don't understand is that with Sims, you can never not have a target. Like you can't have, so in Dungeon Slice, we'll touch on this here in a second. When there's a quote break in between mobs, there's still a target there that exists. And Dungeon Slice does something to mimic not having a target. But in Hectic Ad Cleave, there's always one target, right? So there's one boss for the entire 5 minutes of the sim, and then it just adds waves of five every now and then. And so there's a lot of things that are wrong with that sim. So, for example, a trinket like Ashvane's Coral, right, where normally you'd be switching it like in a Mythic Plus scenario, right? If the ad dies, the trinket activates and stuff like that, right? So in Hectic Ad Cleave, if you put the trinket on the main target, that main target never dies, and so you're just gonna get a bajillion stacks by the end of the 5 minutes, and so
Yeah,
that
it'll tell
trinket's
you
gonna
that
be
Coral is good in fucking Mythic Plus.
Well, it's actually, I mean, when that first ad dies in the dungeon slice, the coral does drop. Like if you go in to the HTML report of a dungeon slice sim with using the Coral, you can see the stack up times, and I think it's like 15% uptime on 2 stacks. So it is, at least getting close to simming a Mythic Plus scenario where you're sort of bouncing Coral between different targets, and it doesn't really get to stack up, and it's still pretty good in that scenario.
Yeah, no,
But
Coral's
it's
not
more of
that
a
bad,
yeah.
but
And another way to look at the hectic ad cleave is, it's 5 ads with 33-second cooldown and a 22-second duration. If you just math that out, you're basically looking at 66% uptime on 6 targets and 33% uptime on a single target. And the main problem with that, because the movement doesn't matter for BM, right? The main problem with that is, 6 ads for 66% of the encounter is just a lot of AoE, and
yeah.
most dungeons are more of a mix, and that's what Dungeon Slice tries to do. But there's a compromise to both solutions. But what I say to most people asking is just, I'm mostly a proponent of Dungeon Slice. I don't think they're both great options. And I think, for any individual scenario or dungeon or whatever, you could probably like craft your own set of raid events for something like that. But, that's beyond the scope for the vast majority of
99%,
people.
yeah.
Yeah. And you can also, just try and mess with your own target counts and stuff for patchwork. Or just, look at single target, 2 target, 3 target, 4 target separately and try to look at like trends of, that's what Prox meant by engage your brain. You look at the trends of what seems to be good across a wide set of
Yeah,
target counts.
I mean, there's also like when we're talking about for Mythic Plus, there's hey, what are the affixes this week? Hey, with this group, does my group need more of this or does it
Yeah.
need more of that? Hey, with this particular tank, how's that going to change? This one is fucking brain dead and needs 30 seconds between pulls to fucking reboot. There's so many other little factors that are all going that that you actually take into account every time. Like you already do these things um, that the program's not going to do. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
guess I'm just encouraging critical thinking as still
yeah.
the most important piece of this when you get outside of the constant. It's
Yeah.
it's great to have that constant and to use that to formulate a lot of your understanding, then apply critical thinking across the top of
Yeah,
it.
I mean that's the basic premise of using Sims anyways, right?
But a lot of people seem to forget that
Yeah.
particular piece.
So going back to Hectic Ad Cleave, one of the things, so back when we had Reaping, Hectic Ad Cleave was actually a better estimate, so to speak, and that's why a lot of people still use Hectic Ad Cleave is because they, back from Reaping, everyone said, hey, just use Hectic Ad Cleave. Again, was not completely accurate, but it was the best estimation we had, not because, I mean, we've already told you what Hectic Ad Cleave is, right? It's the one boss with 5 ad spawns. But it was the closest sim that gave you the closest damage distribution. So if you're looking at, for BM, for example, your Beast Cleave and all that stuff, your AoE, it was about the same damage distribution as Hectic Ad Cleave as a normal Mythic Plus dungeon, plus or minus, which is why we said to use that. That being said, it still does not mimic a dungeon whatsoever. And so, like Proc said, you still had to use your brain, and still, like, there were a lot of um, I guess, exceptions to Hectic Ad Cleave back in Reaping. Now that Reaping is gone, Hectic Ad Cleave does not resemble Mythic Plus whatsoever. Like, it's not even close. So definitely do not use Hectic Ad Cleave anymore. So now what we use is Dungeon Slice, and we sort of this they made this back when see it back in season 1 of BFA, and a lot of people don't really know what Dungeon Slice does properly, and so they just say, "Oh, Dungeon Slice, I'm just gonna send myself and listen to what it says." Well, so what is Dungeon Slice? Dungeon Slice it emulates a slice of a dungeon, and it alternates between a boss for like 3 to 4 minutes, and then it adds multiple size packs of mobs, right? So 4 to 6 mobs for a short time, 1 to 3 mobs for a short time, and alternates, and then goes back to a boss, right? And it does that for, I think it's like a 13-minute sim or something like that.
It's a
Um,
6-minute sim. And it basically by slice, it's just like it takes maybe
6 minutes.
20,
Oh, it
30,
says right here.
40-minute dungeon scenario, and just tries to condense the timings, like the distribution of time spent on single target and so on, into 6 minutes.
Right. Wasn't it? It used to be longer, I swear. Did
No,
they?
it's always been six
Has
minutes,
it?
but
Okay.
like it was not based on it, but I guess it was inspired by the sim that I did, which was a set of raid events and instructions for also trying to emulate a Mythic Plus dungeon, and that was like hard locked at 20 minutes long.
Maybe it was the ones that you used to do that were longer than that.
Yeah, it's possible.
But yeah, so it alternates between single target and small groups of mobs, which that by itself is not indicative of an actual dungeon because I mean you go to Freehold, right, and you pull 10 mobs at a time, and then you do a boss with you have two bosses, and then you have a boss that you have to move out of melee for 10 seconds every 30 seconds, and you do another group of 10, then you do a group of 2, right? So it's not indicative of that in terms of mob size just by itself. But then you look at, so how does it emulate time between packs, right? Because that's what Dungeon Slice is known for. That's I guess it's a dungeon, right? It tries to emulate the dungeon time between packs. And so the way the Dungeon Slice does that, and you can see here, the invulnerable line. So, like I said earlier, you always have one mob in the sim, and you can never have zero mobs, right? And so what it does is it makes that boss. So say you have one boss, you add a wave of 5, you kill that wave of 5, and you want to have a 10-second downtime. Well, during that 10-second downtime, you're still gonna have that one boss. And so what it does is it makes that boss invulnerable, and it stuns the user, right? And so you can see it's not here, but the stun is where's it? Oh, here, stun. So there's a command which stuns the user and it makes the boss invulnerable. So effectively, there's nothing happening, right? Because the player is stunned, so you're not casting any abilities. The boss is immune, so it can't take any damage, right? So that's how they mimic downtime. Well, there's a couple issues with the mimicking downtime, especially for dot classes. And so if you have a dot that's longer than what is it's 10-second downtime in between packs, I want to say. And so if you have a dot, so like Agony for Affliction Warlocks, for example, right? You have to stack up Agony to however many stacks, and you leave it on that boss. Well, if it's immune and stunned, you're not recasting Agony, and the boss doesn't take any damage. But as soon as it becomes not immune and you're not stunned anymore, that 10 stack of Agony is still on the boss, and it's still ticking for 10 stacks, which is not indicative of how an actual Mythic Plus dungeon is, right? Because in actuality, the mob's going to die. Then you have to reapply and re-ramp up that agony on a new mob. And so there's a lot of issues with Dungeon Slice in that sense. And so something like um, Coral, or I think you said that it actually they changed it, right, Azor? That it's not on that one mob anymore,
Yeah.
and so that it's activated. But I think when it first was released, it was inaccurate, right? Because they just left it on that single target.
Uh, I'm not sure if they've ever changed it. I do not know. I'm not fully aware of the history of Dungeon Slice.
Um, but yeah, so there's just a lot of things that are plus or minus about Dungeon Slice. It is a very good. It is the most accurate thing we have to mimic dungeons. But that being said, it's so completely off of like an actual, like what Prox was saying earlier. Like you have essences, not essences. You have affixes. You have different group comps. You have tyrannical versus fortified. You have different dungeons. Freehold is way different than a King's Rest or something like that, right? And so it's just so off, like not accurate, that it's almost not even like you can use Dungeon Slice as like a general, like a starting point, but then you have to use your brain to.
Yeah, use your your patchwork shit, etc. As hey, here's some information. I'll lock that away. Use Dungeon Slice to go. Hey, in some other situations, it's like this. Use that to populate the information you then base your critical thinking on. But at no point is it ever a replacement for critical thinking. If you can't critically think, this game is not for you. Just I don't know, go drink lead paint.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, if you have one takeaway from this entire lengthy discussion about SimC, use your brain, use your sim as like a starting point. Like, hey, this is a like idea. Use your brain. Like, hey, is this actually how it is in reality? Hey, I'm gonna use a patchwork sim for 5 minutes. Oh, Ashvane's a 8-minute fight. Is this actually accurate on what I need to do? Well, probably not, right? Because you have 3 additional minutes. There's a lot of other things that could happen, etc. Or hey, I have a council fight with two targets right next to each other. Am I going to send patchwork for one boss for 5 minutes? Well, probably not. You're going to send two bosses or something like that. And so you just have to use your brain with the different situations. Um, Definitely refer to this wiki. You can feel free to ask us questions on how to sim whatever or whatever. Use this for hunters. If you want to check, there's a lot of things. So like hunters, like how to summon your pet for marksman hunters. This is a very good thing. Positioning front. So we actually use this a lot when what's that Azorite trait? Dagger in the back.
Dagger in the back.
Yeah, when Dagger in the Back came out, and so you can actually use this position back, position front to mimic how much damage Dagger in the Back did or didn't do. And there's just like a lot of different things that you can look at. That you should definitely check this out if you're interested in crazy sims, advanced sims.
Now, one thing that absolutely is a giant fucking sim crime that so many are guilty of, and it's so triggering. If you sim something and you come up with a weird result, something that you didn't expect, don't come in the Discord and be like, my sim's doing this. Can someone explain it? And then not fucking link the sim. Holy fucking shit. Oh my god, it was so triggering.
It is crazy that people don't just, think
It's
to
all
do that. It's
every
like
day.
you're
It's like
asking about a
100
sim
times
you've
a
made.
day.
It's like, just link it, bro. Like everyone loves finding other people's sim problems because it's usually like pretty obvious, and
Yeah.
everyone likes to be the I got it
Yeah,
person. But
yeah,
if you don't link
exactly.
it, you're just denying all those helpful people.
Oh, like, I legitimately hope you find a fucking lump in the shower when you're doing your self inspection. Like, just
uh,
fuck.
Oh God, who was it? There was someone that came in the Discord like a week ago and they linked a sim and it was like a 10 target 1.5 minute sim or something like that. And it was like 160,000. He was like, guys, what do you sim for? And he linked this. I'm like, oh my God, dude. Like, what do you like? No. It's just funny that people just are so unaware of like I don't know what types of sim to use and like when would a 1.5 minute AoE sim ever be.
I feel like that person might have been trolling and they clearly got you, so mission achieved. We got them,
No, he was
boys.
serious. No, look. Yeah, that dude didn't realize how irrelevant the sim. No, he was totally serious. He was asking for sim, like everyone else's sims. But
Hmm.
but yeah. Um. All right, so I think that's all. So we just had a super lengthy discussion about Sims. So I guess we can sort of open it up to questions. If any of y'all have any questions, or if you want to know how to sim something or whatever, um, put it out there. And yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Whip it out.
whip it
Questions out
out.
for Harambe.
Proxy said you sim for 56K.
Ooh,
Almost 57.
Mm.
ooh,
Azure, what are you?
Not
54,
fucking that.
5 or so. Not that.
Nah,
Yeah.
like,
God,
so
and
in
it's like I was, 2 weeks ago, I was really happy with my sim because it was like close to the, top. It was really good, and then Prox comes along and he just gets fucking boosted.
Yeah. So like first boss, I bonus roll 455 crossbow. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. And then I think second boss or something, or maybe like third boss, I got a bit of Azorite and that gave me enough chalk. And then I was like out for the next boss. And so I like duck out. And I'm like, oh, I'll scrap that. Oh, I've got enough to get roll again at Helm. So if I've rolled Soul's Guard, I'm like, sweet. And I've already got the Orgazoa chest and Cannoneers. I'm like, okay, well, those two things were like really fucking unlikely. They get like Mythic Font as well. It's just like fucking anything I needed. Yep, here you go. Here you go. Here you go.
God. If I get my coral and I get my Mythic font, I'll be at 55.6, which is like still a chunk off. It's
I mean, you know you're gonna get super close for sure, and Ghost is gonna fucking wipe you. He's just gonna fucking drop that bait
man.
right on the console, and fucking three people are gonna stand in the beam, and you're just gonna be like, "This fucking Belgium, fuck."
Yeah, let's not talk about my Sims right now. I think I'm barely at 50k. They're so bad.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you could I don't know, get a lot of extra damage on the Krogs on Zul or something. You'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, see now they removed Orgoza from All Stars, so I don't have to pat on Orgoza anymore to keep up with everyone else. Okay, I've got some questions. Random question: do you think we'll reach 100k DPS in 8.3? Uh, what were we pulling in BOD? Like
uh,
20, mid 20s, early
really
30s?
good Mega Talk was 2025. But that was Mega Talk, maybe a bad example. But the one of Grong, yeah, Grong, really good Grong was uh
Like 27?
2025 early tier, 25 28 32 late tier, I guess.
Yeah,
It
so
depends if they
And
just
now we, yeah, and I think at the end of
do
this
a
tier we're gonna be
gear bump.
doing double that on Sivara, so maybe.
Yeah. Like the big thing is if they introduce something else other than just here's more gear, then yes. If it's just more gear, then we'll probably be pretty close. I don't know, because this time around we got essences as well. Like that was
right.
quite a big bump having three essences compared to that not being a thing. So like it's pretty common to sort of double between tiers more or less. If that happens, then yeah, absolutely. We just have to see what system or what change they put in for the next tier. Although if you read the rumors, apparently we all fucking die in the next tier. So it's
uh,
just we all sim for zero because we're all fucking dead.
oh, the leaks. The leaks. Hmm. One common problem when it does come to people asking about simming is for dungeons. There is someone who did a couple of short 3 and 4 target sims, which seemed to help but couldn't be applied for every dungeon because of pulls and whatnot. These sims were, like, this is freaking long. What the? These sims were used trying to
Want me to read?
encourage the use of Blood of the Enemy Major, despite every dungeon will never be the same. I think it was a good way to at least get somewhat of a base ground sim for a dungeon. Agree, disagree. I don't remember. What did you ask? That was so long. I don't even know what you asked.
That
Basically,
is
like, can
one
you
piece of
substitute Dungeon Slice for patchwork sims of varying target amounts? And that's kind of what
Um,
I touched on earlier. Um, I, I'd prefer a Dungeon Slice to almost any set of combinations of those things because at that point you're looking at these like with really long constant free target fights. That's just not realistic because for example, Lust, you're mostly using a boss, and the one good thing about Dungeon Slice is that it opens with a boss and it lusts that boss. Most of the time, although not on high fortified, you lost bosses. Um, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of doing that stuff generally, doing like patchwork multi-target sims.
I mean, you can, but there's so many things that you have to consider, right? Because if you just do a 3 target patchwork fight for a minute and a half, well, you're gonna be bloodlusting that. You're gonna have all your cooldowns available right at the start. You're gonna, there's just so many things wrong with the sim innately. I think it automatically gives you all of the buffs, like the raid buffs and stuff like that. And so if you go in and delete lust, delete all the buffs, delete, make it so that you have the buffs and everything that you would in a dungeon, and but even then you're going to have all your cooldowns up, and from pack to pack you're not going to have all your cooldowns available, and so it's not really indicative of an
So it's
actual free
still
pack.
it's still good information to have to make your decisions on, but you shouldn't assume, hey, that result I got is going to be for every pack.
Right.
I actually think there is still a lot of value in getting that and helping with your decision making, but then saying, hey, obviously if I blow everything on that pack, on the next pack I will have none of those things. Maybe I'll check out what that's like as well and make some decisions
Yeah,
between those
I
things.
mean, if
Just
you
it's more information. It's not a compact answer.
I think so what I do personally, I start off with a patchwork sim and I know what my gear setup and what it looks like in patchwork. And then I do a dungeon slice sim, what it looks like in dungeon slice, and then I do a hectic ad cleave sim just to see, okay, this gets better in heavy AoE, right? Or, in patchwork, hey, this is really good in pure patchwork. And so then you take the three sims and sort of look at the gear, what the differences are and stuff like that, and then you say, okay, hey, it's fortified weak, it's teaming, there's a shitload of AoE. I'm probably going to lean more towards the heavy AoE build, right? Whereas if it's tyrannical and you're running a King's Rest or something like that, you're going to lean more towards the single target build. And so you don't literally do a sim and take it for like verbatim what it says. You have to sort of do multiple sims, compare your results, and sort of take the best setup based on that, if that makes sense. Um, Next question. Do you look at any other stats besides mean DPS when comparing sims, like DPS range, for example? Uh,
Um, Only as a sort of tiebreaker if you're looking at simming two different options and they both basically sim the same, then you're gonna go through a list of like what I like to call tiebreakers. That's gonna push you in either direction. So the first one I'd say is which one is easier to play with. And then another one further down the line might be, okay, which one has a smaller DPS range? Because, generally speaking, you'd want less RNG, less variation in your DPS from pull to pull. But, you can also look at the other, if you're just trying to go for that golden rank one or whatever, or something, just hoping for everything to align, then you might go for the sim with the higher max potential.
Yeah, it depends what you're simming for too. Like a big thing is if you're on prog, um, then a combination of what's easier to play with and what lines up with particular events that are happening in that fight, I think are quite good as
and
well.
reliability
Um,
on prog, right?
like early on Ashara, I really, really liked what you call it,
Zappy board.
cyclotronic
Yeah.
beam, yeah, because it helped a lot with one of the hulks. You had the beam for one hulk, your folks Azorite beam for another hulk, and then you've got to blast it again on a one of the three bitches. Like there were things it helped with a lot, and then as that changed, as all these nerfs came in and everything else, it's like, okay, the bits that made that good aren't really necessary anymore. Now these other options are better. So I think if you're still progging or you're looking at what's better for those sorts of things, thinking about, oh, this is going to line up with our weird timings on Ashvane, or this is going to line up with the ad phase on that particular fight. Like, definitely that's something I think you take into account that you won't, see black and white in Sims as well.
Yeah. I think Ajar is a really good point because some hunters run um, the raid essence, whereas I mean you saw like Azor, right? Like some hunters also use focus irising beam for the ads because it lines up really good for the ads, and you do need to kill the ads. Um, and now that being said, some classes are better at single target versus AoE and stuff like that, and for hunters running the iris isn't that much of a DPS loss versus running the
Yeah, or you've got Iris, but your raid has a Rep Heli and a fucking
Frost DK and
DH who's going Fell
yeah.
Barrage and a Frost DK and so by the time you fucking get to blink, the ads are gone. And you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I might just fucking go back to Rock Boy.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely like simming is one thing. It's good to sim. I think you need to sim if you want to be the top of your class, and you need to understand how to sim, when to sim, stuff like that. But using your brain is the biggest thing here. Like thinking about the fight, the situations, or thinking about the sim that you're running. Like, hey, is this applicable to end game? Is this what's gonna, you know, come of the actual fight or whatever. And so definitely think about it. Critical thinking is the name of the game here. Um, I think I don't see any other questions. So I mean, Azure or Proxy, y'all have any other things to say? Wrapping up.
Um, Nothing specific. I mean, I'd encourage people to, if the APL section of this podcast at all interested you, then I suggest like going to, I'll link it in the chat, the simulation craft like wiki with the APL syntax and everything, and like experimenting and getting into that kind of stuff because that's some of the stuff that benefits thousands of people. Like if something you've made can make it into an official APL thing, you've just made literally thousands upon thousands of hunters sims a bit more accurate or a bit better or a
Yep.
bit higher. So yeah.
Yeah. Also, SimC has a Discord, so definitely if you have any other questions, if we're not able to answer, go into the SimC Discord, talk to them. Those guys are super helpful. There's like all of the developers that work on SimC across all the classes can help you with whatever, if you're trying to do something in advance, they'll help you with the formatting, or, if something's not programmed on the back end, they'll let whatever. Definitely go talk to them. There's a couple of videos in True Shot Lodge. I think Azor has a video on how to do basic
Yeah, I
simming.
might make a new one
Yeah, it's a little
because it's
dated, but
from
it's
like yeah.
still pretty much accurate. I haven't
Yeah,
watched
it
it in a
still
while.
works. It's just talking about, set bonuses, which are like what's that?
Yeah. Um, but yeah, there's a bunch of different resources, or obviously you can rewatch this podcast and but yeah, um, I think that's it. So if there's nothing else, I guess that is the end of episode 5.
Thanks,
Finish
guys.
waking up, have my breakfast. Later, boys.
All right, later, guys.
See you around.